Me, Jim Jones, myself. Gold records, platinum records, gold albums, platinum albums. You know, me, Jim Jones. No diplomats, no nobody else. Me, Jim.
I don't have much to say about it because I don't believe that Jim Jones believes that he's a better rapper than Nas.
There are levels to this rap game, and stepping into the wrong lane, that'll get you caught up quick. So when Jim Jones grabbed the mic and boldly claimed he rapped better than Nas, yeah, Nas, it wasn't just confidence. It was like tossing a match into a room full of gas. That one line cracked open old tensions, deep-rooted misunderstandings, and the long-standing question of how the culture really sees Jim. Let's be real, hip-hop never fully wrapped his arms around Jim like it did his peers.
You smoke, right?
Yeah.
Were you smoking when you said you better than Nas?
I might have been a little bit. Well, as far as, let's get this right. I'm way more influential than Nas, and I don't care what
No hate to Jim, but come on. He's not even in the same league. It all went down during a chill sit-down with Angie Martinez. They were vibing, talking about his come-up, his music, his place in the game. Then boom, Jim drops the bomb. I rap better than Nas. No laugh, no wink, just stone cold serious. Angie blinked, the room froze, and the second that clip hit the internet, boom, instant chaos. Now to be fair, Jim's always carried himself with that swagger. That's his thing. He talks heavy, and fans expect that. But claiming you out-rap Nas, that's a whole different level of wild. Nas ain't just any rapper. This is the man who dropped Illmatic at 19, the lyrical genius who's in textbooks and still gets name-dropped in battles like a legend. So yeah, the internet went nuts, clips everywhere, memes flying. But it wasn't just social media chatter. Big voices in the culture had something to say.
No diplomats, no nobody else. Me, Jim Jones. Check my track record, then check everybody else's track record. Then go to the billboards and check all my entries, then check all them entries and like that. If you want to go to the billboard entries, pull up Nas billboard entries, then pull up my billboard entries.
Can we address one thing though?
Go ahead.
Jim Jones has 9 entries in the Billboard 200 with 3 top 10 albums and no number ones, while Nas has 27 entries, 16 top 10 albums, and 6 that have reached number 1 on the Billboard 200.
Right now, 2025, I'm in the game still rapping at a high capacity. If Nas wants to smoke, come in the booth. I will rap circles around.
Smoke.
Jim Jones is rapping at a high capacity right now in 2025. I'm on record as saying I think some of the best music that's been coming out of New York in recent years has been from Jim Jones. I haven't seen Nas in that mode. Nas still makes great music at a high level. I just haven't seen Nas in that, let's get active, getting at each other mode.
Nor threw in his 2 cents on his podcast. Charlemagne straight up called it a reach. Fat Joe gave that look like, for real? And Jada kiss. He couldn't stay quiet either. Nobody was throwing straight up shots. But the vibe was clear. Jim, come on now. Don't push it. This wasn't hate. It was hip hop doing what it always does, standing guard over the craft. In this culture, respect don't come from just confidence or loud talk. It comes from real work, legendary bars, classic records, and the depth of your influence. Jim's got some moments, We Fly High, early Dipset heat, but let's not kid ourselves. His lane was always more about energy and swagger than deep lyrical content. That's not a diss, that's just how fans and critics have been calling it for years.
At a high level, you check my record, I'm still playing at a high level. I'm rapping at a high level. You better check my stats, bro. I will run circles around now.
To be fair to Jim, he did try to walk it back later. Said he wasn't trying to throw shade at Nas. Claimed he'd just grown into his own style and believed in his own skill set. But by then, that clip had already gone full viral and turned into a beast of its own. And here's the part that really made it messier. It didn't feel like just a wild take in an interview. For some people, it backed up an old idea that Jim's been known to talk bigger than what his discography actually shows. Now, not everyone saw it that way, but it sure gave folks in barbershops and podcast comment sections fresh material. People started digging through old freestyles, replaying verses, stacking up discographies side by side. The debate wasn't whether Jim had hits, he definitely had some. The real question became, did the game ever truly view him as a lyrical heavyweight? Or was he always seen as Dipset's hype man, the dude with presence who played support while the others spit fire? And then Jim doubled down again. Playing at a high level. Check my record. I'm still playing at a high level. I'm rap. Now that's confidence. Some folks said Jim's comment was all ego. Others figured he was just reaching for the respect he felt the game never gave him. Either way, the response was loud, and not in a good way. This wasn't Jim's first time dropping a hot take that made people do a double take. But this time, the crowd wasn't laughing. They came with receipts. And the part that probably hit hardest, it wasn't random trolls talking slick. It was people from inside the game, industry vets, New York legends, even folks who came up right beside him. They didn't drag him, they just didn't back him up. And in hip-hop, that silence can cut deeper than a diss track. But forget the memes, forget the think pieces. The real moment of truth came later, when people who really knew Jim, those who were there when Dipset was just getting started, when Harlem was blazing hot, began to speak up. And that's when the story shifted, because the issue with Jim wasn't just about bars, it was about respect. Here's the twist. Respect in this culture ain't just about skills. It's also about loyalty, especially coming from Harlem, where your name and your word mean everything. And when it comes to Jim's history with Cameron and Mace, it's been complicated. Real fans remember how it went down. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, Dipset looked untouchable. Cameron, Jim Jones, and Juelz Santana formed a trio that shook the streets. The style, the slang, the videos, it was pure heat. But even in those early days, people didn't see Jim as the lyricist.
Out of all the crazy stuff he been saying lately, that was definitely right on.
He was the energy, the hype, the wild card, not the one spitting the hardest bars. And that label, it never fully left him. In that infamous Hot 97 interview, things got heated when Jim Jones and Mace clashed over Harlem loyalty and respect. Mace didn't hold back. He checked Jim hard, saying he didn't really hold it down for Harlem like he claimed. That wasn't just radio beef, it exposed something deeper. The tension wasn't for show, it was real.
For new and change, but I'm not for riding the coattail of and then getting to a place and trying to stun on the you was riding the whole time. I don't like.
And it didn't stop there. Cameron, the same guy who brought Jim into the game, later pulled away. Their fallout went public, and Cam even threw jabs, saying Jim had an identity crisis and was trying to rewrite his role in Dipset history. For a lot of fans, it started feeling like Jim was always chasing validation, trying to prove he wasn't just the third wheel in Dipset's flashy duo. The energy was off. Then came that moment when Jadakiss stepped in. Jim had dropped a line involving Styles P, and Jada wasn't having it. It wasn't just a clapback, it was a warning. In New York, certain names carry weight, and if you're gonna speak on them, you better have the resume to back it up, period. Even now, Cam and Jim seem cool on the surface, but behind the scenes, that tension never fully left. And when the people closest to you hesitate to ride for you all the way, the culture sees it. It stops being just about lyrical skills. It becomes about credibility. And once Jim started falling out with the same people who helped build his name, the streets started taking notice. People weren't just questioning his bars, they were questioning his story. And things only got messier when Jim ran into someone who truly had nothing to lose. Smell me, Jimmy. Word. You already know what that means. By the time his beef with Cameron and Maze was all over the blogs, Jim's credibility in the rap world had already taken some major hits. But it didn't stop there. This wasn't just about rap anymore. When doubt spilled out from the studio and into the streets, that's when things really got shaky. Dipset drama had already made Jim look unstable to some, but what came next made folks wonder if Jim was ever truly built like that in the first place. This wasn't Cam clowning him on a podcast. It wasn't Mace checking him live on Hot 97. This was the streets talking, and when they start speaking, people listen. If you were outside during the late 2000s to early 2010s, you've probably heard the name Ronald Rod Diggs Heron. He wasn't some rapper faking street ties, he was the streets. A convicted kingpin, a feared figure, and someone who once said he'd rather go out like Nino than come home like Sammy. No fake image, no gimmicks. He didn't chase clout, he was the clout. So when Jim Jones pulled up to a Brooklyn block function expecting his usual love, Rod Diggs wasn't having it. According to multiple street sources and more than one YouTube expose, Jim rolled in thinking his chains, fame, and blood set status would hold weight. But Diggs wasn't impressed. Not by the music, not by the image, none of it. Word is, Diggs called him out publicly and spared him. Not with fists, but with silence and social dismissal. And in that world, that kind of past says everything. Witnesses say Rod Diggs stepped to Jim with zero hesitation, straight up questioned who he really was, and told him flat out, "You're not that guy out here? No fight, no chaos, just raw tension." And in that silence, it hit harder than a punch to the face. But here's what made it even heavier. This wasn't just some random calling Jim out. This was Rod Diggs, certified in the streets. His name carried serious weight.
Like he wanted to do one with 50 Cent. That's what it sounded like. It sounded like Jim.
Nah, I don't want to do nothing with that.
So when he checked Jim in front of everyone and Jim didn't clap back, not even a word, that wasn't nothing. That silence spoke volumes. Word is, Jim left the scene without saying much at all. No pushback, no defense, just dipped. And for fans online, it might have sounded like another wild hood tale. But for people who really understand how street politics work, it was a statement. You can rap about that life all you want, throw up sets on stage, drop names and claim ties, but when the real wolves come out, how you move in that moment tells the truth. Suddenly, folks weren't just questioning Jim's music, they were questioning everything, his image, his identity, the whole foundation. And let's keep it real, this wasn't the first time Jim leaned heavy on those street ties. He name-dropped OGs for years, repped Dipset's Blood's affiliation like armor. But when the energy shifted and the aura faded, none of that saved him. Because here's the thing, you can say you're street, but if the streets don't say it back, that's where the respect stops.
You popping all that bullshit. I be seeing you, Jimmy, talking about we Gucci boo boo. He in the Gucci store. Talking about we Gucci boo boo. Them Black King niggas was going fuck Jimmy. They was like, Marita.
The Rod Diggs situation didn't go viral. It didn't need to. In circles where your name means more than money, that moment was loud, and Jim, he never spoke on it. Never denied it, never faced it. It just sat there like a quiet stain that wouldn't wash off, and after that, the way people looked at Jim Jones changed. If the Dipset fallout bruised Jim and the Rod Diggs run-in humbled him in the streets, what 50 Cent did next, that was straight up public humiliation. And the wildest part, it wasn't even personal. To 50, it was just fun and games. Let's rewind real quick. 50 and Jim weren't always beefing. At one point, there was respect, at least on the surface. They were both talking that street talk, flexing independent hustle, moving like bosses. It looked solid, sounded like a real alliance brewing. But all that flipped when Jim started throwing jabs. First at Mace, then at Cameron, and then he started talking numbers. And in 50's world, once you bring up numbers, you better come with receipts. Jim didn't. When Jim dropped his El Capo album, he thought it'd be a victory lap. Instead, 50 hit the gram and clowned him like it was open mic night. Sales barely cracked 5 figures, and 50 made sure everyone saw it. He posted screenshots with ruthless captions, dragging Jim for weeks like it was sport. But it didn't stop at the music.
I believe there's more to this story because Jim Jones is way smarter than that. And
yeah, you know, I don't know what's going on.
I've been in those situations where you in the car with somebody and somebody finds some drugs and nobody wants to claim anything until you get to the police station, and then the person who it was like, it's mine.
50 brought up that wiretap scandal, the one tied to a phone conversation with Tekashi 6699 and Mel Murda. No charges ever came, but the streets don't wait for court verdicts. Once that paperwork dropped, the whispers started, and 50, he turned whispers into megaphones. He didn't say it directly, but the message was clear. He posted up calling Jim a dry snitch, followed by a flood of laughing emojis. For 50, trolling is like second nature. It's chess, not checkers. But for Jim, this was a PR nightmare. The internet lit up and suddenly his name wasn't trending for music. It was for accusations and embarrassment. No matter how real Jim tried to play it, 50 had flipped the game on him, and he made it look easy. Jim tried to play it cool, laughed it off, called 50 a clown, tried to act like it didn't faze him. But when someone with 50 cents kind of reach aims at you and connects...
After Jim Jones.
I see where Jim Jones is coming from. Like, I can see him, because if you're looking at the algorithms now, I can see where he's coming from. But you can't take the legendary status that what Illmatic has done. Just Illmatic.
Oh, you're gonna feel that sting. And the craziest part, 50 didn't even drop a diss track. He didn't need to. A few savage memes, some killer IG captions, and suddenly Jim Jones was trending for all the wrong reasons. People weren't talking about Jim the artist anymore. They were talking about Jim the punchline. Add that to the mix of past beefs, shaky credibility, and those street rumors, and a whole new image started to form, one that Jim just couldn't shake off. That Capo nickname started sounding less like boss and more like a joke. He kept calling himself a general, but the truth, a lot of people weren't saluting anymore. And the worst part, Jim had no solid way to clap back. This wasn't just some rap beef, it was about respect. And once 50 made him look like a straight-up joke in front of the world, those quiet whispers turned into loud laughs. For Jim, that silence, after the memes, after the clown tags, was maybe the loudest silence of all. But by that point, it was already too late. Jim Jones wasn't just trying to defend his spot, he was chasing it. After years of being Dipset's background voice, catching L's in interviews, and becoming internet fodder thanks to 50 Cent, Jim needed something big, a spark. But what he did next, it wasn't a spark, it was gasoline on a burning fire. In a sit-down with Angie Martinez, Jim let off a bomb that left hip-hop in disbelief. I'm better than Nas, ain't nobody bumping Nas in the streets like that.
Wise, Nas has about 9.1 million monthly Spotify listeners, while Jim Jones clocks in around 875.
The internet froze, Twitter blew up. Fans didn't know whether to be shocked, mad, or just laugh, and many did, all three, because saying you're better than Nas, the guy behind Illmatic, it was written, Stillmatic, the King's Disease trilogy, and a Grammy win almost 30 years into his career. That wasn't just bold, it was reckless. Fat Joe, Jadakiss, Noor, all guys who came up alongside Jim, they had to speak up. And when even your peers start setting the record straight, that's when you know the game just changed. Again, even Noor, someone who's been one of Jim's biggest supporters in the industry, had to step in and pump the brakes. On Drink Champs, he kept it cool, but made it clear, we love Jim, but that ain't a conversation, bro. Not when we're talking Nas, not when Illmatic exists. The question wasn't whether Jim had hits, he did. But the real question was, why are we even comparing the two? Nas is more than just a rapper. He's a blueprint for the culture. And Jim, even his biggest fans, the ride or die Dipset heads, had to look away like, man, not like this. Because when the people who actually root for you start saying, yeah, nah, you're wildin', that's a tough pill to swallow. It didn't help that Nas had just wrapped up his King's Disease trilogy, 3 albums filled with grown man bars, evolution, and respect from the new school and the old heads. Meanwhile, Jim was still pushing that mixtape energy from 2007, dropping street flex raps like time had stood still. And here's the real twist. Jim didn't walk it back. He didn't say he misspoke. Nope, he doubled down. Said it was about relevance, about who the streets were listening to. In his world, that mattered most. But that was the problem right there. Jim's world didn't match what the rest of hip-hop was living anymore. The response? A massive eye roll across the culture. Because hip-hop ain't just the block anymore, it's global. And worldwide, Nas is a titan. Jim's words didn't come off like a confident claim. They started sounding like someone begging to be heard. And this wasn't just about personal opinion, it was about legacy. Nas didn't need to say anything. He'd already outlived multiple eras, still sharp, still respected, still winning.
Think about it, right? I mean, we started with Jimmy.
These kids love me. They don't really know who Nas is. Pull up Nas Billboard entries, then pull up my Billboard.
And then now he's on a world tour about, you know what I'm saying? Him and I don't think Nas even responded, right? He responded with a casino. That was bad, yo.
He responded with a
casino.
Resorts World is more than a casino. This isn't just business. This is legacy.
Yeah, he responded with a casino.
Meanwhile, Jim, he was 20 years in and still trying to prove he belonged. For a lot of fans, that's when the truth hit. Jim didn't really get the kind of respect he was asking for. Because in hip-hop, You don't beg for your flowers. You drop music so undeniable. The culture hands you the bouquet without you even asking. When even your own circle starts backing away, that's when you know the storm's getting real. See, moments like Jim's "I'm better than Nas" claim don't just shake how the public sees you, they rattle your inner circle too. Because in hip-hop, respect ain't just about talking loud, it's about who's still standing next to you while you talk. And for Jim Jones, that line started clearing the room. The shift didn't come out of nowhere. You could trace the cracks all the way back to the early 2000s, but things didn't start falling apart in plain sight until Mace stepped back in the frame. And you gotta remember, Mace was there before Dipset had even found its legs. He knew Cam and Jim from the real Harlem days, back when everything was still on the stoop, not on camera. So when Mace started popping up on podcasts and platforms, calling out Jim for the way he spoke on Cam, that hit different. This wasn't some media spin. Mace wasn't playing industry politics. He was calling it how he saw it, from deep inside. And when Jim tried to clap back, the vibe was off. It didn't sound like two OGs debating. It felt like family business spilling out for the whole world to see. Then came that old Hot 97 tape from 2004. Boom, back in the mix like a ghost that wouldn't stay buried. Jim, Mace, and Cam arguing live on air. No filters, no PR, just Harlem tension, raw and uncut. And hearing it years later, you realize those bonds had been shaky for a long time. The unity was for the cameras, but behind the scenes, it was mess. As Jim started pushing harder for solo shine, more interviews, more street talk, more explanations, Cam didn't seem to match that same energy. It started to look like Jim was out here telling his story solo, while his old crew kept their distance. And when that happens, it's not just about image anymore, it's about who's really with you and who's already gone quiet. Cameron wasn't co-signing, wasn't popping up in the same clips, wasn't standing beside Jim on any stage. His distance wasn't subtle, it was intentional, and fans saw it plain as day. Every time Cam did respond, it came off dry, cold, sometimes even sarcastic. The message, whatever Jim's doing, he's doing it solo. And it wasn't just Cam keeping his space. Styles P, another heavyweight in New York, didn't let Jim slide either.
Google-based searches. Nas gets between 200 and 300,000 searches a month globally. Jim Jones gets 40 to 70,000 searches.
When Jim casually threw his name into one of those online debates, Styles shut it down quick, let everybody know he wasn't feeling it, and reminded folks what real street respect is built on. Not loud talk, not viral moments, but consistency, honor, and staying out of drama. That shift in energy, it was loud. Jim wasn't just fighting for respect anymore. He was starting to look alone. But the isolation wasn't just about beef, it was about timing. Cam had switched lanes, stepping into podcasts and content, making smart money plays. Mace reinvented himself, moving from pulpit to podcast, talking legacy and growth. Even Jules, quiet as he's been, never jumped into the drama. But Jim, he was still out here circling the block, still doing interviews, still breaking down old Dipset history like a one-man documentary, explaining who did what, when, and why. And the more he talked, the more people seemed to stop listening. In a culture that lives off crew energy, Wu-Tang, G-Unit, Outkast, Dipset included, it matters when your crew fades out of the frame. Jim had always been the one fighting hardest for recognition, but somewhere along the line, it stopped looking like hunger and started looking like a solo campaign no one else signed up for. After decades of interviews, albums, viral moments, one thing still stuck to Jim like glue: the respect issue. Not because he didn't hustle, not because he didn't stay active, but because the image he built and the reality people saw, they never quite matched. And in hip-hop, when those two don't align, the culture never fully embraces you. Nowhere was that gap between image and reality more exposed than in that quiet moment with Rod Diggs. This wasn't some beef that lit up Twitter or got chopped up on every podcast. Nah, this was different. It flew under the radar. But for the people in the room, the ones who understood how real street presence works, they never forgot what went down. Rod Diggs pulled up on Jim calm, cool, direct, no yelling, no chaos, just pressure. And Jim, known for all that tough talk in interviews for throwing darts and diss tracks, he didn't push back. He didn't hold that same energy. He didn't stand on any of it. He folded, and that stuck. Not because it was loud or wild, but because it was clear. The difference between the character Jim played in public and who he really was in that moment, it was too wide. That kind of moment doesn't need headlines, no blog posts, no viral clips. It spreads quietly, like smoke you can't catch. And that's sometimes way more damaging than anything said into a mic. See, Jim's issue wasn't one bad interview or one crazy quote, it was a pattern. He kept making bold claims, like saying he rapped better than Nas, only for the culture to correct him, quick. Not just fans, but his own peers. He clashed with Mace, fell out with Cam, disconnected from the very people who helped make his name. And instead of keeping it behind the scenes, it all played out in public like another messy chapter from a story that never settled. And then there was that Rod Diggs moment, a quiet but powerful reminder that street energy can't be faked. Either you got it or you don't. And in that room, stripped of the lights, the cameras, the crew, Jim Jones didn't look like the guy he'd been claiming to be all along. He looked like someone chasing a rep that never really belonged to him. So when you stack it all up, the interviews, the internet battles, the image that didn't quite match the energy, you start to understand why hip-hop never fully handed Jim Jones the respect he spent years chasing. And let's be real, it wasn't 'cause he didn't grind. If anything, Jim outworked a lot of his peers. He never stopped showing up, never stopped talking his talk, never stopped trying to shape the story. But respect in this game, it don't come from how loud you talk, it comes from what's underneath. And when folks really took a closer look, what they saw was someone still trying to convince the room, still reaching to be part of a conversation that, truthfully, the culture had already moved past. Whether it was about lyrical skill, street credibility, or industry status, Jim just never stuck in any one lane. The respect he wanted wasn't denied out of hate. It just never felt earned in that deep, undeniable way that legends carry. And that's the thing. Through all the music, all the viral clips, all the press runs, it was that one missing piece that told the real story. Because in hip-hop, presence is everything. And when it was time to really hold the room, Jim just couldn't. But what do you think? Was Jim misunderstood? Did the culture do him dirty? Or was the energy he gave never truly solid? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your crew. We're breaking it all down, one story at a time, so hit that bell and stay tapped in.